So in the old Chinese philosophical way,
Yeah.
what's the meaning of the jade egg?
Oh, that's a good question. In my experience, everyone has a different opinion. So China is a very big country, and even this whole region of the world has so many different tribes or different lineages. Or as as one of my teachers would say, that Qigong, which was actually only given that name recently, is the infinite art, meaning as many families as there were in China, there were different forms, right? And so for me, what's important is to think about the way in which there was an unbroken tradition of people relating to the forces of creation, in a way where they're asking, what does it mean to be in this human body, and what are we here for? How do we do that the best we can? How do we understand that? And so the Taoist tradition has, of course, so many different interpretations of that, whether your goal for life is one thing or the other, and so many different applications of that in terms of Chinese medicine. Which way to work, or which ways to prioritize things, how to organize this infinite art. Of course, there's been a mainstreamifying aspect of that in terms of as much of the interpretation of that has been brought to the West, or as many people in different Taoist lineages were kicked out at different political times from China and then started teaching in different places in the world. Of course, then they started their own lineages, I guess you could speak, and then how that was then interpreted by their Western students and brought together. So as far as the jade egg is concerned, I have been exposed to, I would say, basically like 3 very different approaches from a more, what was claimed to be a more traditional Taoist practice. But for me, the most useful, how can I say, the most useful and empowering versions that I have received of the teachings have come from one lineage that for me, the teacher of my teacher was a very old Chinese woman near Shanghai, about 8 hours north of Shanghai. And she was, at that time, they weren't sharing language. And so she was just showing my teacher all of these aspects of female practice. And my teacher was actually the student of her husband, who had then deceased. And so this older woman was trusting just to literally show all these different practices with the egg and all these different female practices in great intimacy, but without much language. And for me, the stories from that have been the thing that empowered me the most to reenact exactly what this woman was doing, and to feel and understand for myself what was happening in those practices. With all of my previous different Taoist lineages that didn't necessarily expose me to the same depth of jade egg practice. As well as then my own personal modern or Western approach to understanding women's health. Also my understanding of the uterus and the health system with hormones that comes out of more of the osteopathic tradition and the ancient Mayan tradition, which has a really beautiful, the ancient Mayans had a really important way of understanding the structure of the uterus and how it plays with the rest of the body. And so to hear the stories of this woman's, how she was practicing, but without the explanation of why, in combination with all of my other knowledge, somehow made everything make sense for me. And so that's so much of what I'm offering. And then I would say, the other aspect of what I'm offering then became to really genuinely apply these Taoist principles of my understanding of what the feminine is, to my teaching of the jade egg, so that I'm holding that intention of deep, deep listening and of infinite space that's allowing for the creation to happen. And women are having then their own experiences with the egg, and then we're all learning from each other, if that makes sense, and confirming each other. So there's really a container of holding for a process that's happening from the work.
Sounds beautiful.